We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to the latest edition of the Friday Farcast. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'm your host. It is the 2nd of December, and the world is changing right before our very eyes at a very, very rapid rate. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to the latest Senate appropriations bill, the military spending bill that just got passed by the Senate. Overwhelmingly, hardly anybody voted against it. I think there were seven people that voted against it. And the bill itself is it's pretty scary stuff. It essentially allows for Americans to be detained anywhere, not just abroad, but anywhere, and without any due process. It is a pretty heavy-duty shot across the bow in terms of freedoms. In fact, it basically eliminates all freedom, and we are theoretically a few steps away from living in a police state. The only thing that really saved this is a veto from Barack Obama. That's about the only thing that can save this. So what I'm going to do is Juan Cole is a professor. He's a pretty interesting guy, and he just put up a pretty big post on this. So what I want to do is I want to read what he has put up on his site very quickly. This is from juancole.com. Senate bill allows arrest of Americans by military anywhere. The Senate passed a war expenses appropriation bill on Thursday. Now, what they did is they put together a budget, right? So they're going to give the military, it's like an annual fix for the military. It's what the military gets. And we're paying the military. It comes from taxpayers, okay? So let's get that up front, out in the open. So we're paying for our own incarceration, if you want to really get down to brass tacks around it. So they have this bill, lots of money going towards the military, and inside there they've got all these strange little pieces attached to the bill. We're going to get into a few of those, mostly the one piece that's the most disturbing, which is the indefinite detention of Americans. So let's go back to Juan's piece. The Senate passed a war expenses appropriation bill on Thursday. It appears to hold out the possibility that the military can be ordered to arrest and hold an American citizen anywhere in the world, including the U.S., without trial and indefinitely. Senator Lindsey Graham insisted that the move is necessary so that information can be extracted from just arrested terrorism suspects without all that rigmarole about reading them their rights, etc. There is no evidence that important and timely information has regularly been obtained by torture, so the whole premise of Graham's position rests in the facts, not in evidence. If torture could defeat terrorism and insurgencies, the French would still be ruling Algeria. Moreover, there is no evidence that the U.S. military is good at telling terrorists from non-terrorists. Many of those sent to Guantanamo were found to have been sold to the Taliban by a few Iraqi Shiites who had fled to Afghanistan to escape Saddam, ended up at Guantanamo, even though the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda kill Shiites are on site. Language was added to the bill at the last minute, specifying that nothing in this section shall be construed to affect existing law or authorities relating to the detention of United States citizens, lawful resident aliens in the United States, or any other persons who are captured or arrested in the United States. But the language also says that the military can arrest U.S. citizens anywhere, including the U.S. Promises that a provision against terrorism would be somehow limited and would not be used in criminal and other cases have been made before and usually violated. Moreover, since many, but by no means all, of our politicians are apparently a bit unbalanced, something about high office must attract a disproportionate number of people with too much of one chemical and not enough of another. You can't tell which president will get to order the troops into action and why. The militarization of police duties in the name of counterterrorism is a dire threat to the rule of law in the United States and clearly unconstitutional. The aspiration in the Senate bill is not new. The Bush administration allegedly seriously considered sending the military to arrest the Lackawanna Five, Yemeni Americans accused of having Al-Qaeda training sessions in Afghanistan. That move, like the current National Defense Authorization Act, would violate the 1878 Posse Comitatus Law, which forbids the use of troops for domestic law enforcement when civilian organs of states are available for this purpose. We have seen with the misnamed Patriot Act, moreover, that once law enforcement has tools on the books, it typically does not stop at terrorism. The Patriot Act's unconstitutional provision for warrantless wiretapping allowed the FBI to bust strip club owners in Las Vegas for bribing city council members. Even though the Bureau did not have the kind of evidence for wrongdoing that would have been needed to obtain a warrant. This was terrorism. The point is that you let the U.S. military arrest Americans for terrorism, you probably are letting them arrest Americans for anything. Bradley Manning has been formally charged with aiding the enemy by releasing low-level state document cables to WikiLeaks. If you reposted one of those cables on the web or Facebook, is that treason? Could the military come after you for it? Would you also be in the brig and tortured via sleep deprivation and in danger of being executed? By the way, former Vice President and unindicted felon Richard Bruce Cheney revealed to Iran and everyone else that Valerie Plame was an undercover CIA operative working to counter nuclear proliferation in Iran. That's not aiding the enemy, but releasing some inconsequential cables is. But what about civil disobedience tactics such as those of on many of today's college campuses and city squares on the part of Occupy Wall Street? Could mayors just call the military if these activities were construed as terrorism? The ACLU explains that the current language of the amendment is frightening. Since our Congress is almost completely bought and paid for, it has been pushing weird acts that only benefit authoritarian politicians and some billionaire corporations recently, which are wholly injurious to American liberties. Destruction of internet liberty is another cause apparently dear to the hearts of our plutocrats. So this is what we're dealing with right now. It's a big ticket item, and it is frightening, to say the least. You know, I got an email exchange from another blogger last night wondering, you know, is this open season on people like us? And, you know, here's my thought about that. So part of me is in the metaphysical camp, right? Like, well, if you give it energy, you'll attract it to you. There's some truth to that, okay? I don't want to be wholly dismissive of that kind of thinking because there is some truth to it. But on the other hand, you know, I am concerned about it. I do have concern because it is a slippery slope. And as the economic situation declines, then you get more and more people dissatisfied and waking up there's got to be some measure in place to deal with the writhing masses. You get 20 million people all waking up at the same time and realizing that there's no money in banks and that really it's all just a shell game. I'm telling you right now, you're going to have angry nest of hornets on your hands. So, is this a preemptive move to diffuse that action? The only way now it seems that this will not get through is if Barack Obama vetoes it. Now, what do you think the possibilities are that he would veto this? Slim and none. I mean, if you saw the speech that he gave the other day in front of the Constitution, he was essentially advocating this. I don't think you'll have any philosophical disagreement with this bill and everything that's inside this bill. I think it's just going to sail right through. And by the way, bills do not originate or cannot originate in the Senate. By constitutional law, they're supposed to originate in the Congress. But that's, just like everything else today, apparently that doesn't matter. Nothing matters anymore. Nothing matters. The baseline, the constitutional framework and the baseline that we've been dealing with for, since 1776, out the window. It is gone. It is a quaint notion. A quaint notion. There's no way that you can use the Constitution anymore. There's so many end arounds and workarounds with the Constitution that it's my image of the Constitution is like an insect that's been trapped in a spider's web, and a spider is just spinning a cocoon or an egg around the Constitution. It's there, but it's completely encased in the filaments of some insectoidal intelligence. That's the only thing I can say. So this is on the table now. If you look at this in terms of astrology, right? What is Sagittarius? Sagittarius is freedom. It is freedom. It is truth. It is righteousness. Sometimes it's self-righteousness and overzealotry. We can live with that on some level. Mercury's retrograde. And so what we're talking about here is a retreat of freedom. And you have to wonder, are these people so dialed in? I mean, there are two events right now that really have gotten me thinking that there's an esoteric. I mean, look, I've done articles on my site before about Joan Quigley. If you don't know who Joan Quigley is she was Ronald Reagan's astrological advisor, hired by Nancy Reagan. Joan Quigley is the sister of Carol Quigley. Carol Quigley was a renowned teacher in Washington, D.C., I believe at American University, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody could look that up for me. I think it's American University. Who was one of Bill Clinton's professors in college. Carol Quigley has written one of the most definitive insider looks at secret societies and their impact on governance. And he was on the inside, and he wrote a book about it. So Joan Quigley was his sister, and I met Joan Quigley. I think I've shared this story before. It was back in 1988. I was working at San Francisco Magazine, and Joan Quigley had just come out with a book on her time in the Reagan administration and astrology, but mostly about astrology. She didn't really want to talk about Reagan. She wanted to talk about astrology. So me and a freelance writer met up with her in San Francisco at, I think it was at the Mark Hopkins, or the St. Francis, or the Mark Hopkins.